Hi guys, I'm coming to you from Trinidad and Tobago. I've been recently following the fallout from the Count Dankula trial out in Scotland. His real name is Mark Meacham, and he was recently convicted, and he will be sentenced in April of this year for basically posting a joke. Now, anybody who might be following my work understands that there really isn't a lot for a society, a country, a civilization to maintain prosperity. There are basically, some basic rules, and one of which is, the importance of the rule of law. Now, I attended a year of the University of London LLB program, and I didn't finish it. I was kind of going through it when some personal matters came up, and I was forced to leave the program. But in it, I actually learned a lot of points about how the law is applied. And this is why I'm gravely concerned about the outcome of the Count Dankula trial, because it sets a horrendous legal precedent that basically robs the very tenets of the common law. Now, for there to be any kind of illegal conviction, you must have at least one of two things. You must have an evil act, or what's called in the legal profession actus reus, and you must also have an evil intent, meaning your motivation. You have to have done this intentionally, which is also called mens reus in the legal profession. Now, you do have exceptions to this where, like, for instance, if you are speeding, you might have the evil act, which is violating the speed limit, without necessarily the evil mind. You may have drifted above the speed limit, or maybe your speedometer isn't working, and but you will still be charged. But no matter what the case might be, you must have an illegal act that is against the law in order for there to be a prosecution. At least that's always how I've understood the common law to work. You could have the most detestable mind and the most deranged thoughts going through your head, but if at the end of the day you don't actually do anything, that's not a criminal offense. But in the Count Dankula trial, which it's terribly worrying what is actually coming out of this, in the sense that the mens reus, or the evil mind, is actually being imposed upon the person by proxy. Now, it should be noted that in the incident, there was no complaints. Nobody came forward in any kind of huge protest. It basically took the police to go to a special hate crime council to determine whether this was actionable. And their appointed guy basically said, yes, this was offensive. But of the 3 million odd views on the video, and nobody came forward with any kind of legal action, this was very much, it appears at least, that the police were taking it upon themselves to make this an issue. And they're investigating some very strange behavior, because for some reason the media had been alerted when they were going to arrest him, and he came out to the spotlights of cameras and so forth. So it very much looks like this was staged by the police in some capacity. For what purposes we don't know. That's still under investigation. But nonetheless, going back to this actus reus and mens reus, so you need an evil act and an evil mind. No matter what the mind is doing, you can't convict anybody without the evil act, right? And even in the exceptions, at least there is the act in the case of speeding, or several other examples where you might not necessarily have the evil mind, such as involuntary manslaughter and stuff like that. So no matter what, you need the act. And nothing that Count Dankula did was against the law. There was nothing that was an illegal act or an actus reus, as far as I could understand it in the court's testimony. Now, I haven't read the whole thing. I've looked at snippets of it, and I've been following it. But what's really troubling, what's absolutely disturbing, is this idea of evil intent by proxy. In other words, if it is that, and this is basically what has happened, he has told a joke. He has given the context to what he was saying, and he basically said it was a joke. He's teaching the pug to be the most repugnant thing that he could think of. So even his words are acknowledging that this is an anti-Nazi video, because Nazis are evil and disgusting, and he's turning the pug into a Nazi to piss off his girlfriend. So even in that, he's acknowledging that Nazis are bad. And at the end of the day, There was nothing illegal. Nobody complained, and at the end of it, he made the point that he was just doing it to piss off his girlfriend. So nothing in that is illegal. And it takes a third party to be offended on behalf of people who weren't even offended for themselves. I'm assuming it's going to be members of the Jewish community and so forth. Even some comedians who happen to be Jewish came forward in defense of Count Dankula, saying, "This is ridiculous. This is just a joke." But the busybodies and the bleeding hearts, they want to be offended on people who aren't offended for themselves, and the court eventually sided to convict. And that's what's most disturbing. This mens reus by proxy with no actus reus, meaning no illegal act, was enough to charge him. And what that means in reality is that anything that you say or anything that you might do, and somebody else perceives that as offensive, or they perceive that to be of an evil mind or coming from an evil place without any evidence, that's enough to bring you up on charges. That's enough, not necessarily convict you, but to bring you up on charges. And I mean, that is the foundation work for basically the secret police, right? This is George Orwell's 1984 in action. And I for one, I'm quite disturbed by this. I knew it was bad. I even in my YouTube videos, I've criticized a lot of UK policy. I've made a couple, comments about some statements from the PM and Amber Rudd and other things like that. And I have to admit, I've been very cautious about some of the things that I've said. I've tried to stick to policy. I've tried to avoid more controversial topics for this exact reason, that if somebody were to spin around and use this type of tactic on me to basically say that I'm doing things for, whatever evil mind they impose upon me by proxy, I could be charged, right? All it takes is the accusation. And that's, the court should have thrown this thing out. There is no evidence to support any of this. There were no victims. There was nobody complaining. This is the courts basically being offended on behalf of people who were not offended themselves, taking it upon themselves and creating a terrible precedent. And that is the collapse of the common law. That is the collapse of the rule of law. If it is that we're going to start policing men's thoughts based on perception and feelings and these other kinds of things, that is the end of civilization. That is the end of civilized society, because if you cannot have civil conversations and discuss things, I mean, we could just be having an amicable, non-interesting conversation, and somebody somewhere can be offended. So again, this is like imposed censorship by social norms and other things like that. And I, for one, I'm terribly concerned about it. In fact, I messaged my good friend Amos the minute this verdict came out, and I told him, "You defend." He's in the United States. I said, "You defend the First Amendment with everything you've got." And yeah, I'm terribly disturbed by this entire thing. It took me a while to kind of gather my thoughts on this. And I'm hoping to be involved. If I'm back in the UK in time, I hope to go out to the march. I hope to continue to support. I've written my MP, and I'll do everything that I can. And I'm hoping that the guys in the Libertarian Party, the Liberalist, the Ayn Rand Society, Mises, and all types of individualist, freedom-loving, freedom of speech advocates and so forth will rally together and hopefully organize to really push back against this tyranny, this absolute violation of human rights. And for those people out there who are kind of championing and saying, well, this is the violation of, I think Article 9, or no, Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights, I would advise you to read the European Convention on Human Rights, because most of these rights have two clauses. In the first one, they say, yes, you've got these rights. And then by the second clause, they say, but these rights can be taken away if the government sees reason, for the stability of society, for moral reasons, to not offend people and other things. In other words, the European Convention on Human Rights does not actually guarantee anybody's rights. It's a lot of pandering. And yeah, keep me posted on any kind of events, anything that I could do to help, kind of move this along. I've already put out, messages, and I was involved in some of the Twitter conversations and stuff like that. But like I say, guys, Twitter is not real. Social media is not real. Politicians are only concerned about power, and if they're threatened, to lose that power, that's really when action takes place. And I will point again to the Brexit referendum. The only reason the Conservatives offered the referendum was because UKIP was taking their seats in Parliament. So if it is that we've got to organize and get a political party to kind of take power from the more established parties, and have like a freedom caucus made up of like anarcho-capitalists, liberalists, libertarians, minarchists, or whatever brand of freedom-loving caucus we could put together, I'm all for that. I think we really need to put a lot of these differences aside. The guns issues is not important, okay. There are a lot of things that the Freedom Caucus can agree upon, and we could work towards for years, dismantling bits of Leviathan, which is, the overreach of the state, before we come to any real disagreements. And I think we need to put a lot of those differences aside and work together to preserve free speech. I think we could all agree on the necessity for free speech. And on my final point of this, it's very apparent that the UK, at least a lot of people in the UK, don't actually understand free speech, and they believe that hate speech is not free speech. I'm sorry, it is. You should be allowed to speak and say the most vile, hateful things that are out there to offend whomever you want. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't have consequences for freedom of speech, but in order for there to be consequences, there must actually be a victim, unlike the Dankula case. So yeah, harassment is free speech, but harassment is an illegal act. So the words itself, you're allowed to say it, but the persistency and the actions behind harassment is what's illegal. So I think people in the UK probably are not familiar with what a free speech actually means, and it does really mean that the most vile portions of society, the racists, the bigots, the Nazis, the communists, whoever, they have a right to say whatever they want. And we want that. We want these people to speak so that people can hear how bad these ideas are. These ideas can be challenged in the public forum, and hopefully in the marketplace of ideas, the best ideas will rise to the top. And if we don't allow free speech for the everyday person, the everyday man out there to have these conversations about real issues, about Brexit, about the migrant issues, about the issues of taxation, etc., and we silence that, the only voice that will be left are the extremists. And the man on the street who might have concerns about what's going on, and they suddenly find out that whatever hate group or whatever the case might be is the only ones talking for them because hate speech laws have shut down the moderate dialogue. We empower those extreme viewpoints and extreme movements. That's why we need freedom of speech. Nazis have a right to speak. Everybody's got a right to speak, if for no other reason than to shut down some of their bad ideas and challenge it with reason and logic, and show flaws in the argument, in the art of debate, which is very much lost in this day and age. But yeah, guys, that's my video. I'm most perturbed by this whole thing. Put your comments below. Let me know how else I can be of help. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Connect with me on social media. I'll put all of the links below. And as always, thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.